Let me tell you something most people don't realize until the damage is already done. Your success, your peace, your mental stability rarely get destroyed by strangers. They get destroyed by the wrong people you allow into your inner circle. The people you trust, the people you confide in, the people you give access to your time, your thoughts, your vulnerabilities. Toxic people don't show up with warning signs taped to their foreheads. They don't introduce themselves as chaos. They don't announce their intentions. They show up charismatic, supportive, relatable. They laugh with you, encourage you, stand beside you until they don't. And that's what makes it dangerous, because many toxic people don't look toxic. They look normal, sometimes even loving. They may be friends, partners, coworkers, even family, but slowly, subtly, consistently, they begin to drain your energy. They plant seeds of doubt in your mind. They normalize dysfunction. They question your confidence. They chip away at your momentum. And the worst part, it doesn't happen all at once. It happens gradually, quietly, so quietly that by the time you recognize it, you're already exhausted, second-guessing yourself, and wondering why your life feels heavier than it should. Here's the truth. Proximity is power. Who you allow close to you will either elevate you or erode you. Today, I'm breaking down 7 types of toxic people who can quietly ruin your life if you don't recognize the patterns early. And more importantly, I'll show you how to deal with them strategically without losing your confidence, your boundaries, or yourself. Because awareness isn't about paranoia, it's about protection. Let's get into it. This person, nothing is ever their fault. Every setback has an external villain. Bad job, the boss was toxic. Failed relationship, their ex was crazy. Financial problems, the economy's broken. Missed opportunities, someone didn't support them enough. They live in permanent blame mode. Now here's the tricky part. At first, you feel compassion. You want to be supportive. You listen. You encourage. You try to problem solve, because that's what emotionally healthy people do. But over time, you start noticing a pattern. They don't actually want solutions. They want validation for staying stuck. You suggest applying for new jobs. They explain why that won't work. You recommend therapy. They say it's pointless. You offer accountability. They call you unsupportive. And slowly, the dynamic shifts. You go from being a friend to being an emotional crutch. Here's the real danger. Mindset is contagious. If you spend enough time around someone who blames everything and takes responsibility for nothing, it starts affecting you. You begin justifying your own excuses. You start focusing on what's unfair instead of what's possible. You hesitate to take ownership because you've been conditioned to see yourself as a victim of circumstances. And growth cannot exist in a victim mentality. Successful, emotionally strong people ask one powerful question: what can I control? Chronic victims ask a different one: who can I blame? How you handle them matters. Offer support once. Offer solutions once. Be kind, but be clear. If they consistently reject responsibility, stop overinvesting your time and emotional energy. You cannot rescue someone who refuses to stand up. At some point, compassion without boundaries becomes self-sabotage. Protect your mindset. It shapes your entire future. This one is dangerous. Not loud, not explosive, not obvious, strategic. Master manipulators don't attack you head on. They don't yell. They don't always insult you. Instead, they control indirectly. They guilt trip you. They gaslight you. They twist your words. They subtly rewrite history. You walk into a conversation confident and walk out confused. Somehow, you're apologizing for things you didn't say, defending things you didn't do, explaining yourself for things that never required explanation. And the scariest part, they stay calm while doing it. Their tone is steady. Their logic sounds convincing. They position themselves as reasonable while quietly dismantling your confidence. They'll say things like, "That's not what happened. You're being too sensitive. You're remembering it wrong. I never said that." And if you hear that long enough, something shifts. You stop trusting your memory. You start second-guessing your instincts. You begin asking them what's real. That's the goal. Because once you stop trusting yourself, you become easier to control. Manipulators thrive on emotional reactions. They provoke you, then criticize you for reacting. They push buttons, then act surprised when you respond. It's psychological chess. And they're always thinking 3 moves ahead. So, how do you handle them? First, recognize patterns. Pay attention to how you feel after interactions. Confused, drained, doubting yourself? That's data. Second, don't argue emotionally. The more emotional you become, the more leverage they gain. Keep your responses calm, short, direct. "No, that's not accurate. I disagree. That's not how I remember it." You don't need to over-explain. Manipulators feed on reaction, starve them of it, and most importantly, rebuild trust in yourself. Your clarity is your power. This person smiles at your wins. But deep down, they're uncomfortable with your progress. They clap, but it feels forced. They congratulate you, but there's tension behind it, because your growth highlights what they haven't done. Jealous competitors turn everything into a comparison, even when it's not a competition. You get promoted, it's probably just politics. You launch a business. I know someone who tried that, didn't work out. You start going to the gym. Let's see how long that lasts. Notice the pattern? They rarely attack you directly. Instead, they minimize, downplay, subtly discourage. At first, it sounds like concern, then it starts to feel like doubt. Eventually, it becomes friction. And here's what makes this type dangerous. Insecurity often disguises itself as realism. They don't want you to fail because they hate you. They want you to stay small because your growth makes them feel exposed. When you level up, it forces them to confront their own stagnation. So, they plant seeds of hesitation. Are you sure that's smart? Don't move too fast. Maybe wait a little longer. And if you're not careful, you'll start shrinking your ambition to keep them comfortable. But here's the truth. You cannot grow around someone who resents your growth. Environments matter, energy matters, proximity matters. So how do you handle them? First, stop oversharing. Not everyone deserves access to your next move. Protect ideas while they're fragile. Second, limit how much influence their opinions have over your decisions. And third, build quietly if you have to. Momentum is easier to protect than to rebuild. Not everyone deserves front row seats to your journey. Some people only get updates after you've already won. You know this one immediately. After spending time with them, you don't feel inspired. You don't feel supported. You feel drained. Not physically, emotionally. Every conversation turns into a crisis. Every update is dramatic. Every story is heavy. They vent, complain, and unload, but rarely pause to ask how you're doing. And if they do ask, it's quick, surface level. Then it's right back to their chaos. Energy vampires thrive on emotional intensity. They bond through negativity. They keep relationships alive through problems. The danger isn't one bad conversation, it's repeated exposure. Over time, your optimism weakens. Your mental clarity fogs. Your mood shifts after every interaction. Because energy is currency. And they overspend yours without ever depositing anything back. So, how do you handle them? Set time limits on conversations. Don't become their unpaid therapist. redirect constant negativity instead of absorbing it. You can care about someone without carrying them. You are not responsible for regulating everyone else's emotions. Protect your emotional bandwidth, because once your energy is gone, everything else suffers. This one doesn't confront you directly. They won't argue face to face. They won't clearly disagree. They won't openly compete. Instead, they operate in subtle ways. They forget important deadlines. They show up late when it matters most. They make sarcastic comments disguised as humor. They give compliments that don't quite feel like compliments. Wow, I didn't expect you to pull that off. You're actually doing pretty good for you. I was just kidding, relax. On the surface, they seem harmless, easygoing, even playful. But underneath that surface is quiet resistance. They won't attack you openly, they'll undermine you quietly. And that's what makes them difficult to deal with. There's always plausible deniability. If you confront them, they lean into innocence. You're overthinking it. I didn't mean it like that. You're too sensitive. Over time, this behavior creates friction and confusion. You start questioning whether you're imagining things. You begin second-guessing your reactions. And slowly, trust erodes. Not because of one major betrayal, but because of repeated small fractures. Passive-aggressive behavior is controlled hostility. It's resentment expressed indirectly. So how do you handle it? First, call out the behavior calmly and specifically. When you say it like that, it feels sarcastic. When you forget deadlines, it affects the team. Stick to facts. Avoid emotional escalation. Second, don't accept vague apologies. Clarity matters. And finally, set clear expectations. Define what accountability looks like, because clarity forces accountability. And people who rely on ambiguity lose power when everything is brought into the light. Controllers rarely look controlling at first. They look protective, concerned, invested in your well-being. They'll say things like, "I just want what's best for you," or "I'm only trying to help." But pay attention to the pattern. They monitor your decisions, question your choices, critique your friends, influence your schedule, tell you what you should or shouldn't do. At first, it feels like guidance. Over time, it becomes restriction.
No, stay back!
You start running decisions by them before acting. You hesitate without their approval. You explain yourself more than necessary. And slowly, your independence shrinks. Control doesn't always scream or demand. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it disguises itself as love. But real care empowers you. It doesn't confine you. So how do you handle a controller? Start making small, independent decisions without seeking permission. Stop over-explaining your reasoning. Set clear, firm boundaries. I appreciate your input, but I've decided I'm comfortable with my choice. If someone truly respects you, they'll respect your autonomy. If they get angry when you set boundaries, that tells you everything you need to know. This person prides themselves on being real. They'll tell you they're just practical, logical, grounded. But look closer. Their realism almost always leans negative. You share a new idea, that probably won't work. You feel excited about an opportunity. Don't get your hopes up. You decide to take a bold step. That's risky. Now, here's the subtle danger. They're not openly attacking you. They're framing their fear as wisdom. They call it caution. They call it maturity. They call it experience. But over time, their constant doubt chips away at your confidence. You start second-guessing your ambition. You scale your dreams down to something safer. You begin playing small to avoid criticism. And dreams do not survive in pessimistic environments. Vision needs belief. Momentum needs optimism. You cannot build something big around someone who only sees limitations. So, how do you handle them? Filter what you share, especially in the early stages. Surround yourself with builders, people who think in possibilities. Protect your vision while it's still fragile, because not every opinion deserves access to your ambition. Let me be clear, not every toxic person is evil. Some are wounded, some are insecure, some are repeating patterns they never healed, some don't even realize the damage they cause. But understanding someone's pain does not mean accepting their behavior. Their wounds are not your responsibility. Your responsibility is your peace, your growth, your future. And here's the real shift most people miss. You don't need to fight toxic people. You don't need to argue. You don't need to prove them wrong. You need to limit access to your time, access to your energy, access to your goals, access to your emotions, because access is power. And the most powerful move you can make in life is not winning a battle, it's walking away from environments that shrink you. Growth requires space. Confidence requires support. Peace requires boundaries. The quality of your life will always reflect the quality of the people closest to you. Choose carefully, because who you let close will either elevate your future or slowly erode it.